Welcome to the Trailblazers Experience podcast. I'm your host, Intola. On that note, let's get into the podcast. So welcome to the Trailblazers Experience podcast.
Wow, I'm so excited. Thank you.
I am so excited as well. This is so cool. I'm so excited to have my guest for this episode. And this is none other than Kelly Vero. And, I did my Googles. And this is what I found out about you. I mean, it's always good when someone reads it out to you so you know about you and what you're about. So basically, what I found was, it says here, game developer, 30 years experience, a keynote speaker, a CMO, which is Chief Metaverse Officer of Aqualand, which is female founded and led, founder of Metacrun.ch and Naked, and an advocate for women in tech.
Yes, guilty of all of those things.
Brilliant. And so happy to have you. How are you?
Yeah, good. I've been so excited about this all week.
This is like the highlight of your week.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't wait to find out the things that we're going to be talking about today.
Exactly.
And it's nice to see you again.
Definitely. And just for the audience, I met you at a, let's call it a retail event a few weeks ago, and saw this woman, with lovely hair, lovely glasses, with her sneakers, did the prep check. And I was like, who is this woman? And it was actually International Women's Day as well, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yes, it was. Yeah. And you did this amazing speech or keynote to a bunch of people in suits, and some women were in the audience, and you were talking about everything tech, metaverse, Web3, blockchain. And I came out of there saying, right, first of all, this woman is badass, but also, how is one going to implement this into the future of retail? I just left there thinking, such a great opportunity to talk about you, how you started, and maybe motivate some young girl out there who's thinking, I think I might be good at coding. I think I might be good at gaming. What am I going to do? So let's just talk all the way back.
Yeah.
Where are you from?
Nottingham.
Where are you really from?
I'm really from Nottingham.
Wow.
I'm talking to you today from Switzerland.
Okay.
I'm actually from the East Midlands. So, born and bred in Nottingham. Come from just a regular background. Grew up on a council estate. Parents didn't have a lot of money. Went to the local comprehensive school.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think one Christmas, my mum worked about 20 jobs. And one Christmas, I opened my presents and they bought for me something called a Spectrum 16K. It was 1983. I was 10 years old. And the first thing that I did that day was read the manual.
Okay.
Which is something that not many women really do, because we already know it, right? We know everything by osmosis. But I sat down, I read the manual, and that evening, before I started playing video games, I started coding. Did my first bit of code in a language called BASIC. And I was always, for everybody that's sort of listening at home, I'm talking to you today with bright blue hair and funky glasses and bright lipstick. I usually wear pretty bright hair or clothes. But this comes from the fact that I was crazy about video games.
Right.
Crazy from a young age. So all of the people where I grew up, all the kids, they were all boys. There were no girls in our clique. We all grew up breakdancing, BMXing, going down to the local arcade and playing video games. And that's where I got hooked. And so when that Christmas came around, I started doing my first code. I was like, that's it. That's what I want to do. If you grow up and go to your local comp, they say to you that you ain't going to do that, girl.
That's it. I don't think on Careers Day they had a game developer come over and say, right, this is the direction you should be going. So how did you then navigate through that then?
Well, first of all, I had to have a really awkward conversation with my careers teacher where he said, hey, look, they've got some openings like at the local hairdressers where you could be a hairstylist, you could be an apprentice. Actually, later on, 40 years later or so, I actually do have a job as a hairstylist, but in the metaverse, which is a totally different story. So in the end, Mr. Townsend, I did exactly what you wanted me to do. But I didn't go to college because I didn't have the right credentials that they wanted for me. They said, you won't do very well at university. You don't come from a rich background. You're not going to get to go to a red brick. So forget about that kind of thing. And instead, why don't you just follow a different sort of path? And so I just quit and I became a bit of a lost soul. Right. And one day I found myself kind of working in a bar. My parents hated it. They were so mad at me because they said, you've got so much intelligence, you're just squandering it. And I was just bumming around. And then this guy came to the bar and said, oh my God, you look amazing. What else can you do? And I said, what do you mean? I was 19 years old. Yeah. He said, I've just started making this video game and I would really love it if you joined the team. You've just got something about you. I think you should come and work for us. So that Monday, I showed up at the door and we started making Tomb Raider.
Oh my goodness, that's crazy! And where was he based? Where?
Derby. Is that where
Tomb Raider was created then?
Yeah.
Good old Derby.
Yeah, good old Derby.
You'd never know.
No, and then that was it. That was the beginning. I'd started at the age of 10 where I got a bite of it, and then I went all the way to the age of sort of 19, and there was a complete wasteland of nobody being able to support me. No role models. I had to be my own role model. And then somebody gave me a break and I was like, wow, that's it. I'm getting on the Jumbo 777 and I'm out of here. I'm going straight into computer games. And that's what I did. And I just went for it, sky high.
Oh, that's amazing. I mean, it's interesting because you're talking about that then, but unfortunately, even now in schools, it's still the classic, career paths that are being proposed. And there are kids that have other skill sets. And the great thing, there is the wide, wide west of the internet. And we'll talk about the metaverse as well. There are other things that you can do and be successful in as well.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that, working in a bar is not like being a lost soul. It gave me a lot of transferable skills. Yeah. I was able to communicate with people, which, any teenager listening, if you're sort of 13 and your mum's always saying to you, stop being a layabout and go and do something, you just grunt at them. Every teenager's been through this phase. Yeah. Even me. Definitely. So this is not like a thing. But what the world teaches you when you get out there is that there are a lot of transferable skills that you have already in you. You've got a toolkit. You just need to know how to apply those things. Yeah, yeah. So you started off doing that, game developing, and then how did it progress from there? Where's that taken you? Wow, well, it's taken me to millions of places because, fast forward into the future, and I started working on a video game called Transformers Universe. And it was there that I met with Hasbro, who own the franchise Transformers, and they asked me to create a character inside their universe. So I created a Transformer, and my storyline for Transformers Universe is actually the storyline for The Last Night. So if everybody's seen that film, you'll see that obviously that video game story also became a movie. Spoiler alert, spoiler alert. It's true. Yeah. But it is a bit of a spoiler alert because you can play or watch one without the other. But it's interesting how over the last few years especially, I've been able to see that the skills that I have from game development have been so useful in other areas too. So I started off in a bar, I went and worked in video games, and then I actually provided the storyline for a movie. And then today, the types of things that I do is I use game technology, gamification, environments, digital objects to be able to create everything from digital fashion to NFTs. And that really did put me on a super path to being able to talk to you today. I mean, you know, Kismet and destiny brings us to really strange places, doesn't it?
Yeah. And, you know, at the time, so when you were a game developer, obviously you talked about the skill sets that you need. What do you think are the, you know, the main attributes or skills that has enabled you to progress, you know, in this particular career?
I think I've got a curiosity for
Yeah.
things. And I think anybody that's listening to this and thinking, how am I going to get into the video games industry? Curiosity is really the thing that brought me to the door of core design that day. And I ended up working with that team. And curiosity is the thing that will drive anybody in computer games or technology towards wherever it is that they're going to. I mean, I don't even know what the destination is for me. I'm just on a journey.
Yeah.
And that curiosity is kind of like my guide. It's like my map. Where do I want to go to next? So that's a good thing. Secondly, it's great to work as part of a team. Being a team player is important because if you do something wrong, everybody's done wrong. If you do something right, you can share the spoils of victory with everybody. But also working on your own and being able to motivate yourself and use your initiative is a really important part of what it is that we do also. Because there are times when we have to spend, I've spent sometimes an entire week just watching one piece of footage, looking for changes or things that are different. So that attention to detail.
You're very attention to detail and very analytical. It's a key skill because even to code, that is something that you should have, isn't it? Being very meticulous, attention to detail, numbers oriented as well.
Yeah, critical problem thinking and solving, design thinking. These things are really sort of key. Coding, it's really just like me saying, on parle français. I'm talking to you in French. If I'm using C++, I'm using a different language. If I'm talking to you in English, I'm using my native language. But I'm very cognizant of the fact that languages don't necessarily have to be things that are just spoken languages. They're also languages that we code in and they're languages that we write in.
And you speak quite a few languages as well as a result, isn't it?
Yeah.
You named them. So obviously English,
Japanese, French, German, Italian, Maltese.
I mean, amazing. And you've lived in all those countries before as well, where those languages are spoken?
Well, yeah, in Switzerland, you have to speak the languages of Switzerland.
That
Really. So that's French, German, Italian, and you speak German. So zusammen wir können sprechen gut. So
yeah. I've always said, you know, people who speak languages, that is a skill set that you should not ever underestimate. So I have like two siblings who went to university in China and they speak Mandarin. And I'm so in awe because I said, you do not know how this language is going to take you places. You don't know it now because you're just thinking, oh, you know, another language I've learned and when am I going to apply this? But I truly feel there is an opportunity for them to utilize that skill set somewhere. So it's
and
good
later
to know.
they will say "shoo to you.
For sure. So let's talk about what you're doing now. And I had to, you know, I work in digital, but I think it's always important for people to understand what, you know, Web 1, Web 2, Web 3. So, you know, the classic definition of Web 1 is basically the static web, right?
Yeah.
And then
correct.
Web 2 is the interactive web. And then Web 3 is interactive web powered by AI. How did you get
everything? Yeah. And 3D and all that cool stuff. How did I get into that? Well, during the pandemic, I think we've really needed to focus our attentions on not being in a silo. And we had to try and maintain that social element that Web 2 was giving us. However, at the same time, a lot of us were spending time playing games and we'd been in Second Life 10 years previously. And a lot of folks were sort of hanging around thinking, We could do conferences inside Second Life. We could do meetings inside there. I'm really bored of being on the same old Zoom calls and Microsoft Team calls. And why can't we do things that are in more of a open and interactive way?
Yeah.
And I think that was a real big exposition for what it is that we're going through today. And definitely because there were a lot of great tools that were being created in the years prior to that, that gave us a lot of freedom to be able to do stuff either anonymously or perhaps more safely. We became very cognizant and aware of data and how people were messing around with our data and trying to push us in one direction using data into another. And I think that the metaverse really opened our eyes to be able to feel a bit more free at a time when we were locked down. So it was a very important pivot point for a lot of people. And although I still make video games, I still talk about video games, a lot of the things that I do these days are focused pretty heavily on the metaverse and Web3.
That's very interesting. And also when we talk about, blockchain, do you want to describe what blockchain is?
Yeah, blockchain is a bit like your little accounting book that you might put in one side, or the things that you've spent, and the other side, or the things you've received. Call it a ledger, but this ledger is completely decentralized. So it means that this ledger's in the air. You can constantly update it and you can draw down information from it, but that data is completely anonymized. And it isn't owned by anybody because it's owned by everybody. So we all have a part to play in maintaining either specific or open blockchains.
Yeah. And do you think there's certain industries? I mean, when I talk about ownership, I always tend to think about the music industry and maybe artists as well, that this is an opportunity for them to take back ownership of their creative arts and space.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not just that. A good use case in the art space for blockchain and Web3 actually is archiving. Because we have this whole library of history and we only have one lifetime.
Yes.
Everybody that lives their lifetimes, they all add something new into the pot. Well, where does it all collect? What we do know in the past is that the Library of Alexandria burned down. And we lost a whole heap of knowledge during the end of the Egyptian civilization and the beginning of the Roman. But today, in 2023, this information is being constantly generated inside the blockchain, meaning that in the future, we have a greater opportunity of being able to find out where we're from or what specific artifacts belong to which, and cataloguing and just general archiving. If you remember that the Notre Dame caught fire a few years ago.
Yes.
It was actually put back together by AI.
Yeah.
It was put back together by people.
And restored, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, from a video game, because we had the original scans of the Notre Dame via a game called Assassin's Creed. So we were able to dive into Ubisoft, who are the people that owns Assassin's Creed, and ask them to reproduce the scans for us so that we could build Notre Dame Cathedral.
I believe they're trying to do the same as well in Ukraine, where historical buildings have been destroyed as well, to create it so that it lives forever.
Correct. Isn't it amazing what we can do?
Yeah. And I also think from someone who has an African heritage and culture, that's also a good way of archiving and bringing our history to life. Because in the past, if you think about tribes, everything was told via storytelling, isn't it? Your grandparent passes it on and passes it on. But actually, if we have an opportunity for this information, to be shown visually as well in a digital form and cannot be altered or changed because you keep the authenticity, that's brilliant. That's sort of why I think, okay, great. I understand why, blockchain and the metaverse is necessary. I think of it from a practical perspective as well.
Tola, Africa is one of the most exciting places on earth for blockchain and Web3.
Why is that?
Well, because most people in Africa are mobile first.
Yes.
And so their connection as digital natives is already set in stone. You know, some of the best esports teams in the world are African. So, and they're female, by the way. And the thing about Africa is that it has so much more freedom than the rest of the world in terms of its connectivity. There are limitations if you go out, you know, into the wilds of, and remember that Africa is like a gigantic continent.
Yes.
There are lots of different cultures, lots of different elements and hierarchical systems, even financial systems, which we talked about together when we were together last week. But the important thing that brings everybody together on this continent is their ability to utilize mobile and digital technologies better than the rest of the West, because that's the only way that they can communicate.
Yeah, so there's
That's
an opportunity for them to accelerate.
Correct.
And utilize that even further. So let's talk about being a woman in the industry, because I consider you a trailblazer, and we're trying to inspire women who might be coming up in the industry. What are some of the challenges that you've faced, and how have you overcome them?
I think one of the key ones that women always want to know is my industry sexist? And the answer is, yeah. Every industry has elements of sexism.
The old boys club.
Yeah, it's absolutely ridiculous. When I first started, and I'm, you know, feel very free to cut this if you want to. When I first started working in the games industry, one of the interviews that I had involved sitting on the knee of the CEO. He wanted to interview me by sitting on him.
When I started in the industry, there was this thing where the CEO just used to come and touch you and hug you for no reason. And I thought, is this appropriate? But you couldn't say anything. You just, everybody.
You wanted your job. You wanted to.
Yeah, really weird.
Being a trailblazer like yourself means wanting to be in that position.
Yeah.
You want to do the best job that you can possibly do. And in doing so, sometimes the things that you see and the things you have to put up with are not just people photocopying their own bums, but there are things that I've seen in the industry that I don't ever want to see again.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so what I've tried to do is carve a career out for myself where I don't have to have those awkward conversations and have those strange situations that I can't get myself out of. So I set about making myself my own role model, working to lift younger women that were coming into the industry and really showing them the ropes in a way that was understandable and appropriate. And I think that really helped me as a woman to be able to shine a light on other women so that people didn't feel like we've got to sit on the boss's knee in order to get promoted. Yeah. It's not like we took one for the team. It's just that we saw it. We don't want to go through it again. So we're just going to swerve everybody out of the way, all the women out of the way, and we're going to make sure that we put females first.
Yeah, I think a lot has changed, because if I think of 20 years ago when I actually started working, I was told that I had to have a certain hairstyle in order to succeed in the role. There's a certain way that I had to dress. And you know what? I went along because I was ambitious and, you know, did what needed to be done in terms of looking the look that is not, I think, threatening to them. But the older that I've gotten, and actually I'm so happy to live in a generation now where authenticity is accepted, you know.
Number one, yeah.
You can be your authentic self, your work ethic speaks for itself, your experience speaks for itself. And we are here as women now to motivate the next generation as well. So, I mean, yeah, I've been through a lot in that instance.
We've all come a long way, haven't we? Definitely. I think. Definitely. From just being, you know, of my parents' generation, if you wanted to succeed in something that was technology related, you would have to go through a specific process, and that would be going to secretarial school and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, look, listen, Mum, this isn't for me. Yeah. This isn't what I want to do. I want to be like him. And she was like, why do you want to be like him? I said, because there's no her that's at that position. Yeah. I want to do that. Yeah. And whenever I used to sit in job interviews, they used to say, because you're ambitious as well, what is your ambition for the future? I was like, to take your job.
Yeah.
That's what I want to do.
Do you know they find that is too assertive, I think, when you've said that, saying, so what's your end game? And I'm like, well, CEO, CCO.
Yeah.
They look at you and I say, I will manifest this. It's going to happen for sure.
Ask the universe.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then it happens.
Ask the universe, but also put in the work, you know. Don't just sit around waiting.
Oh yeah, no.
Yeah. Are they certain women that you've looked up to, you know, it might be in your industry or just coming up?
Well, meeting you last week was pretty special. You're like my new you're my new role model and icon. But I think growing up, you know, you talked about music earlier and it being a good use case for blockchain. I also think it's a really great use case for role models because the roles that women play on stage in music are so much more attainable, I think, for you as a person in business. So I know that I'm not like Susie Sue from Susie and the Banshees or Salt and Pepper, like especially Salt from Salt and Pepper, or Spinderella. God, I wanted to be Spinderella so badly. But the point is that, again, it was really difficult to find decent female role models away from anything other than music. Certainly in my industry, from a design perspective and from a computer programming perspective, actually there were only a handful of role models and they were men. And I don't think that's a problem to sort of identify that men are good role models.
Of course, yeah.
But also one of the big role models for me when I was sort of coming up was a trans woman. She was, and she died in 1998, but what she did for the trans community, for women, and for computer science generally was absolutely incredible. And it's something that I can't forget. But we only ever had, like, up to that point, maybe Ada Lovelace as a woman. And she'd been dead for 200 years at this point, right? So...
I think so. It's even for myself, when you sort of look, okay, who's a role model in STEM and, you know, business, etc. There are very few. You know, growing up for us, the role model was Oprah because she was just amazing and she was on television and she'd achieved so much. And then suddenly you've got Michelle Obama, who's a lawyer and she's a first lady. But actually, you're right. You do tend to look to the creative space, whether it's artists or...
Where they're more brave as well,
exactly.
I think.
Yeah, pushing the needle in a way.
But more recently, a fantastic role model that I've discovered is Dorcas Mutoni, who is the pioneering African woman that is getting African women to code.
Yeah.
Young African women. She's taking them literally out of school and going, you want to work in computer science? This is how we're going to do it.
Definitely. Yeah.
I want to be like her when I grow up.
I mean, that's brilliant. I mean, you should go meet her. I think
I'm gonna do it.
Yeah, for sure. Let's talk about work-life balance, because obviously you've worked really hard to achieve, from a academic or credential in business perspective. But, let's talk about work-life balance, and is that important to you? And what do you do to unwind?
Well, I play video games, of course. Yeah, I do work really hard, probably too hard. Work-life balance is like an interesting thing, because I think if you are coming up in business and especially in computer science, it's very hard to get away from the thing that you're really passionate about. And passion and enthusiasm is a really massive part of what it is that we do. So I'm not going to beat myself up too much about playing video games, whether I made them or not. They're still really enjoyable.
Yeah.
But certainly I am an absolute die-hard super fan of two things: fashion and Korean dramas.
Right.
So I will literally watch I would just binge all weekend long on every single platform that's going anything, whether I'm on the cross trainer working out or doing Pilates, or whether I'm doing a little bit of, I've got it on constantly in my ear or on my screen. I'm just watching it because I'm thinking, this is helping me to switch off from the stress and the cortisol that's pumping around my body. So yeah, that's a good one. And fashion, oh gosh, I'm just such a fashion lover. For anybody that's listening at home, I am and have always been the most awkward person in the world. Nothing fits. I've got too long arms. My legs are too long. My bum's too big. My boobs are too massive. My waist is always too big. I couldn't wear a Chanel jacket if you paid me $1 million, because I would be like the Incredible Hulk as soon as I put it on.
But as Lizzo says, you're special. I bet if you went over to Chanel and said, could you make a bespoke version for me, they probably would.
For a big girl with huge boobs.
Yeah.
But so what I did instead was I made a digital one, and I wear that whenever I get an opportunity to just put that on in a game or whatever. So I was pretty happy to do that. So even when I'm looking for things to unwind with for myself, you will find me tinkering around doing other stuff.
I guess it's because also you're passionate. You've talked about passion. You're working in an industry that you're passionate about, and it's through your passion that you've probably also been able to progress. Because I think sometimes we look at it the other way around, saying I'm chasing the money, and there's the frustration. But if you're passionate about what you're doing and there's a purpose, then everything else sort of follows as well.
Everything that I do is about passion.
Yeah.
A lot of the projects that I've been involved in, I think someone's literally just coughed themselves to death in the other area. Yeah, I think they're okay. I think everything that I've put into my work has been me. I put a bit of myself in each and every time. And I think that's a really important part of your working life. That is part of work-life balance, because if you're passionate about it, it shows in everything that you do. And that's not to say that you have to work and crunch for the rest of your life to do stuff. It's just to say you want to take ownership of a project that you've worked on. When it's ready to present, you can say, I did that,
Exactly.
I made that, and I love that.
Yeah. So what does success look like to you, in your personal and professional life? Because you've had so much accomplishments, but I think I sort of feel like there's more for you to do. But what does success look like for you now and moving forward? I
think success looks like the smiles on the faces of people who actually enjoy what it is that you've created. Mm-hmm. I can make it a meal for my husband, and he'll sort of turn his nose up at it if it's something that's not something that he's tried before. Yeah. And the same thing follows with any product that you create. If you put that time and effort and energy in, that's what success looks like. You learn something about yourself. You create that knowledge transfer skill, and you are able to feel that feedback from the people that you create for. And that's what success looks like. It's not about, oh yeah, I'm swimming around in my pool with all my millions of bucks. Come on, girls. This is not what it's about, right? It's about feeling like you have achieved something that if you were to drop dead tomorrow, and gosh, I hope it never happens to anybody, but you've left behind something that is truly you. Yeah, yeah. So someone sitting at home and saying, right, game developer and working in Web3, blockchain, Metaverse, what does a typical day look like for you in your world then? From a work perspective. I wake up in the morning, spend like an hour with my pet bunnies, because I've got 3 rescue bunnies, so I spend time playing with them. Then I go and sit in front of my desk and take a look at my emails for a little bit. And then I make a start on whatever the day's tasks are. So I've usually got a list of tasks I've got to complete in a day. I have quite a lot of clients, so there's lots of different tasks that break up my day. Yeah. And that's kind of cool, because I think sometimes you work on the same task all day long, it will absolutely drive you insane. I just work through, I have a break at lunchtime, and then I'll sort of carry on. But I have a lot of clients that live in either Japan or the USA or India. So I will usually finish work at about 8 o'clock. But remember, I've got 3 rescue bunnies. Yes. So I'm able at any point during the day to just move away from my desk, have a little stroke of the cute little ears and the fur and the wiggle the nose, and then go back to the hard work.
Yeah.
Sometimes I love the opportunity to bounce ideas off of someone and have a bit of a sounding board. I often have a lot of meetings with folks, but I try not to be a meeting person because there are a lot of things you can do in an email that you don't have to do face to face.
Well, that's true. But also in the nice thing about your profession is, so you've talked about working in different time zones. So you sort of are a bit flexible in terms of, the time that you are working. So when one time zone is going to sleep, you can take a break and then jump onto another project. Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
I do a lot of stuff in the metaverse, so I spend a lot of time inside the metaverse during the day as well, which is quite nice. So my avatar is usually walking around, talking, sitting, looking at new things, exploring new worlds. So it's quite an eye-opener, really.
Yeah. So let's talk about the metaverse. So obviously someone will be, listening to this and saying, what is this? Or they might be a native and be active. So what exactly are you doing in the metaverse as a CMO? What's your purpose? What's the project that you're working on?
So the project that I'm working on has been up to this point a children's metaverse. It's an educational metaverse space. And as a metaverse officer, I'm really just wearing the same hat as a technical person, like a CTO, but I'm actually taking that technology into a place that's more hybrid. So it's very design and visual focused.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of visual perception and aesthetic. But then that's mixed a little bit more with, okay, what is the back end going to be? How are we going to do this on blockchain? Yada, yada. So they're the types of things that I kind of do in a day-to-day. I want to figure out, for example, how people can be protected, young people. So I'll reach out to various data and privacy and cybersecurity experts. I'll spend a bit of time thinking, then I'll code that up and write a lot of design documents. A lot like your experiences, really, in total. I think what I do is I create a lot of documentation, which, should I get hit by a bus, someone will be able to pick that work up and go with it. I think that's really important. So my advice always to anybody is document everything you do.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. Think about why you're doing it and should have a purpose. And I find that's really good if you're working on an educational platform in the metaverse, thinking about all these things about safety for the children that will be using it and all these other things. Because a lot of things can also go, wrong in the metaverse as well, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
And let's talk about Naked. So what is Naked?
Naked is an AI-powered fashion engine which pulls clothing directly from Vogue or Elle or Marie Claire, Grazia, and takes those SKUs and product codes and compiles them directly into digital fashion items for Decentraland, Zapetto, Avakin Live, Call of Duty, any game, any metaverse, any space.
And that sounds really exciting. How did you come about? Were you approached to start it, or is it an idea you've always had because of your passion for fashion? How did that come about?
It's a little bit of both, actually, I think.
Yeah.
One of the sort of big motivators for me is time. So I want to be able to do stuff quickly.
Yes.
And I would read in Business of Fashion that Cartier are doing this one-time relationship with, I don't know, Hello Kitty game or something. And I would think to myself, is that it?
Yeah.
So I've got to get the Hello Kitty game to check out the Cartier collection. Well, that's just ridiculous. Why can't I have it in every game?
Yes.
So I designed a special AI, generative AI engine to basically take the look and place it into every single game platform, if the game platform wants it, of course.
Yeah. I think that's super exciting. And that just speaks also to your skills, that you are always wanting to challenge the status quo, and then do something about it.
Especially in fashion, because it's very boring.
Yes.
And everybody in a senior management position, for the most part, it is definitely changing. But for the most part, I mean, Prada has just got its first female creative director in absolutely years.
I know.
It's insane. Everyone's pale, male and stale. And it's just so boring. And I just do not want to see a middle-aged white guy running a fashion house. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
you want to make women look beautiful, get women to make women look beautiful.
Yeah, and maybe a few women of color would be nice. They're
absolutely.
Yeah.
Louis Vuitton have got a female innovation lead.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely amazing. And she's a person of color, and she is well worth a follow. She's absolutely amazing. But we have a really long way to go.
Yeah.
It's embarrassing.
It is. It is. And I think that's why I sort of started this podcast in a way to say, like, let's empower women. Let's get chatting. On a podcast, we're not syndicated. We're not censored. We can have an honest conversation for those people who want to listen to it, and maybe connect a few people who are challenged in terms of how they can get into an industry in that way as well.
I agree. I think that women have got so much to offer digital technologies. Mm-hmm. And I think as well, what I was talking about earlier, I think as well, people of all colours, all shapes and sizes have got something that they've got to bring separately. Yeah. But I want to see more women of colour in our world, because the key part about the metaverse is that when we create our avatars, we have to look for a version of ourselves. Mm-hmm. So if we are not seeing who we are inside that space, everyone's just going to create the same old homogenous vision of the perfect skinny white girl, blah, blah, blah. No one wants to see it, girls. Yeah. So be in that space and be the person that you want to see.
Definitely. So let's talk about relationships. What are the relationships in your life? Obviously talked about your bunnies, but and you're married. What keeps the fire in your belly burning? Who are your troopers? Your crew?
Well, it's a funny one. Because I've lived around the world like so much, and you have as well. I think it's kind of difficult, isn't it, to keep, and also I've got like a traveller heritage. It's very difficult to keep friends.
Yeah.
Because that you're always going to be moving on.
Yeah.
So I think the people that I keep close are real, actual keepers. They are definitely the types of people who I really want in my life. Because friends, well, they can be quite transient. Mm-hmm. They're there and a part of your life and very intense for a short period. And then, maybe that they're gone. But I think, I do have a little crew of friends that I like to go and see. They're always really unusual people that do sort of weird, crazy things, or they don't. They're really very, very ordinary.
Yeah.
I found myself last week visiting a friend who happens to own a casino. Now, I've got no business going inside a casino. I don't really care about it. But I wanted to go and see him and catch up with him. Mm-hmm. And it just so happens that he lives in this 17th century mansion, which has been turned into a casino. And it's very well known on Park Lane. And I just had a couple of hours there just drinking tea.
Yeah.
We were just sitting, talking, chewing the fat. We went out onto the terrace, had a bit of a look around, Hyde Park and London and that. And then, I left him again and went back to the hotel. But when I see my friends, what am I looking for when I see them? I want to escape. Mm-hmm. I think I want to hear what they're doing.
Yeah,
I want to know what they're up to. Because my friends are all very inspiring, and they give me a lot of super ideas about the things that I want to create. Or they always say, Kelly, wouldn't it be great if blah blah blah? And I just go away and think, they're absolutely right. I should totally be doing this. And I'm going to go away and design it.
I think that's really cool. I've noticed, so the friends that I have, they're completely different to me, different interests, but they add value to my life in terms of, the conversations we have, the ideas they have. They're pushing me as well, saying, you can do this. Come on, girl. Don't be crazy. That's a great idea. Try it out. So that's what you sort of need. I don't think you grow by just surrounding yourself with people who are have similar maybe careers, interests. They may have similar values, which is always good, but
you're right. It's the values thing. It's the values thing in Tulla that I think is really important. I volunteer at weekends at a place. I volunteer at this place, right? That's like a gigantic jumble sale, and I'm looking after the closed bit.
Right.
So we get all of these vintage cool items that come through, like Lanvin cardigans or good tiny little Gucci trousers from the 1970s.
I need to come and visit you in Switzerland.
Yeah, totally. But I volunteered there for 6 hours a day, and all of my work colleagues are 80-year-old women. And I swear to God, it is the best 6 hours of my week. It is just so good. Yeah. Oh, they're helping me to speak German as well. So I volunteered because I wanted to help out in the community, but I also wanted to learn to speak German, and I get to do it all. It's amazing.
Talks about giving back. So when I met you last week, you talked to me about, I think we were talking about you going to Ghana. So what is it you're going to do there, and why is that important?
So I've got loads of friends there who are building a fantastic blockchain Web3 platform to allow people to trade something called the African dollar. But this African dollar is not focused on the tradition, because everyone's tried the African dollar like a million times.
Yeah.
And it has really not worked like massively. But this is called the sister dollar. So this dollar is aimed at women, entrepreneurial women, supporting other women, and using this coin to be able to trade between different businesses and invest in different areas. So it's actually great. The fun thing about it is, though, is that the two people who are funding it are guys. And I was like, I know both of these dudes, James and Bernard. And I said, guys, why? Why are you not calling it like the brother dollar and not the sister dollar? And they said, you know what? Because the women in our family are the ones that spend our money, and we just go out and earn it, they go and spend it. So why don't we just set up a fund or set up some kind of situation where they can take that money, they can invest that kind of virtual currency where they best see fit, and they can trade between themselves. So the types of projects that are coming out of this African dollar, this sister dollar project, are things like Fem-tech. So Fem-tech applications, health tech, there's fashion in there, there's esports, there's like so many different things. And we're getting to see a different side of women in Africa, where it's not just about, oh, we're going to go make a home and a family, we're going to just get a regular job, we're going to go work for the government, or we're going to be secretaries. It's more like, no, I want to be a lady boss, and this is how I'm going to do it. And I'm going to take some of this funding from Sistercoin, and we're going to do blah, blah, blah. So I'm just going there to kind of lend a little bit of expertise in terms of setting up, the kind of rule sets, we call them rule engines, for how these types of things work. And then I'm just going to absorb like all of the energy and vibrancy of what these incredible women have got to give in terms of building out their own framework and structure for future earning and investment.
Oh, you're going to meet so many trailblazer women in African countries.
It's going to blow my mind. I'm going to feel like this. I feel tiny when I come out of there. I'm going to be like, what?
I mean, there are people there with bachelor's degrees, master's degrees, trailblazer women, entrepreneurs. Entrepreneurship is a very big thing in African countries. So someone who comes from Zambia, entrepreneurship is something that you just have to do, because obviously, there are not many employment opportunities. So you have to create those opportunities yourself. And, on one side, yes, it does take, lots of grit and perseverance, but I think it's character building and is a testament. I admire anyone who starts their own business and, has built it to whatever stage in some way. So you're going to enjoy that for sure. Definitely.
Me too. I'm going to bask in the glory of everybody else. It's going to be amazing. I'm just going to come back like invigorated and motivated to do even more.
Yeah. That's always good. So how important is networking to you? I mean, I think networking is brilliant, because I wouldn't have met you if I hadn't gone to a, networking retail event and sparked a conversation. But For everyone out there who's saying it's so difficult to meet people and to network, what are some tips you would give to help?
Well, the first thing is there's more than one way to skin a cat.
Mm-hmm.
And that means don't just rely on the traditional ways of networking with people. Always network from a place of comfort and safety. Mm-hmm. Wherever you feel safe is a really good place to start. Some people use LinkedIn because they feel it's a little bit cold and there's enough distance between the 2 points. Some people, like you and me, just sit down at lunch and just talk.
Yeah.
Other people, wait for introductions to happen before they can network. Some people just work a room. I mean, some people are just absolute room workers. And those people blow my mind every time. But I saw a couple of people actually at that retail retreat who were like, okay, I'm just going to leave you there for a minute. I've got to go and talk to this person over here. And just basically went through an entire swathe of people in about 5 seconds. Hi, how are you doing? My name's Kelly, blah, blah, blah. But then if you don't feel comfortable doing it like that, think about different ways you can do it. A lot of people network in things like video games. So if they play online games, they talk, make friends and develop relationships in that space. Also in places like Discord, you can join specific channels for things that you're interested in. And Twitch is, oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So yeah, there's like 1,000,001 places that you can do it, but always go from a place of comfort and safety wherever you feel good.
Yeah.
Is a good place to start.
And you're right, it can be virtual, it can be, physical as well.
I did kind of something called, I did like chat roulette before it started to go a bit downhill.
Okay.
But also recently they brought back this kind of chat roulette thing for business. And I went on it a few times and just met complete strangers. I did it during the pandemic. I thought it was really important to meet a new person every single day. And so I just randomly met with people every single day.
And are there any ones you formed a bond, a relationship with?
Yeah,
or?
I'm friends with every single one of them that I met during that time. It was so nuts, yeah.
So it's just going out there, really.
Yeah, putting yourself out there. You'll find that they're not going to be able to help you in business, but, a stranger is a friend you haven't met yet. So it's just important to just kind of keep talking sometimes.
I think that's a very valid point. I think sometimes you don't meet someone because you don't always go with the intention of meeting someone to get something out of them, because sometimes it's forging that relationship that will lead to, in the future, them saying, oh, I know somebody who could help you with this, but you've already met that relationship. I think some people go around it the wrong way, where they are intentional, saying, right, I've met you, I've networked, now what can you do for me? No, it takes time. Build rapport, build relationships.
1,000,000%.
Exactly, yeah. So for those who don't know, we're now going into, I used to do this thing called quick fires at the beginning, but I think I thought I'd switch it up a little bit.
Wow, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready.
Just five things that maybe people don't know about you. So you're a sneakerhead. How many pairs of sneakers do you own?
30.
Okay.
I actually don't own any normal shoes anymore. Okay. So yeah.
So are these like things you bought off StockX? Or are these, special edition? Because the trainers you were wearing last week were totally sick for sure.
Thank you. They were prototype Yeezys because he did this little deal with Nike like 1,000,000 years ago. And I was just walking around in these and I bought them pretty cheap from a warehouse kind of sale. And I went into a store, I was talking to somebody from Hypebeast and they said, hey, those sneakers are really special, right?
Yeah.
I was like, are they? Okay. I just really liked them. They were like, yeah, they were prototype Yeezys, but those folks didn't get along. So I've got a very special pair. And folks say, why are you wearing them? I'm like, because I like them.
Because you like them. I mean, you were working them, girl, last week. So that's brilliant. Countries you've lived in. How many countries have you lived in?
Oh, wow. Easily over 10 countries. Japan, Australia, China, South Korea, USA, UK, Germany, Switzerland, Malta.
Which one did you enjoy the most?
I mean, I have to say Switzerland, of course, but I think maybe the runner-up. I love Switzerland, by the way. It's absolutely amazing. I think the runner-up's got to be Japan. It's amazing. Yeah.
And you've told me how many languages you speak. I mean, that's brilliant in itself. Music.
Yeah.
I read something that you worked for MTV. Is that right? At some point?
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
In the 1990s. Yeah. I took a little bit of time out.
Can I find you? Can I find some footage on VHS?
Yeah, probably on VHS. So embarrassing with like ridiculous hair. Oh gosh. But yeah, I mean, there's two types of music. I've got a guilty pleasure.
Right.
But there's two types of music that I really, really love. I am crazy about hip hop. I love it. I love to rap. I'm so ridiculous. But I just sound stupid when I try to sound like, the RZA from the Wu-Tang Clan. It's just stupid.
And they're touring.
I know! I'm so excited.
Wu-Tang Clan and Nas. I'm just like, oh my goodness.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
It's like the 90s again. And then the thing that I'm really sort of crazy about is rave culture. So because my formative years were in the late 80s, 90s, I absolutely love dancing and, techno and rave and all that kind of stuff. Prodigy and, DJ Psy and all that kind of SS and all that kind of stuff, you see people at like techno raves and whatever now, all looking at themselves in their phones. But we never did that in the 90s. We were just going for it with the music.
No, there's no evidence, thank God, of anything we did.
Somebody would usually bring like a Super 8 camera to one of the raves and just film everybody.
Yeah, that would be so crazy. So you love music, hip hop head. I love that. Rave.
I'm crazy about music. I'm crazy.
Brilliant. That's really good.
My guilty pleasure is cheesy, terrible disco music.
Okay.
Yeah, very cheesy, like Yes Sir, I Can Boogie. That type of stuff is my guiltiest pleasure ever. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm a true hip hop and R&B person, so
I love R&B.
Honestly, all these people that are now going on tour, I'm like, I am copying every ticket out there so I can go and see who I need to see.
I love drum and bass. I love UK garage.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah. So finally, we've got three things that we're going to talk about, and it's really, what are three key Trailblazer takeaways or tips you want to leave with the audience? We've chatted about everything. We've gone like full circle. I feel like there's some nuggets in there that we need to pull out.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, the first thing I think that's really important is be authentic in everything that you do. If there's something that you don't know how to do it, be authentic and say, look, I'm passionate about learning how to code this engine, but I need somebody to help me with it.
Yeah.
And that is you being honest, passionate and authentic about who you are. The second bit of advice is find your tribe, find people who will lift you and support you and you can support them, whether it's through music, like we're bonding over hip hop and R&B and all that stuff, or whether it's over, you're particularly interested in fashion. Please don't bond over Love Island. Those people are not your tribe. They're not my tribe. until Davina does the middle-aged version. But I think that you've got to find your people, basically. You've got to find people who will support you and who you can support and who you don't feel like an absolute dorky idiot when you talk about the things that you're passionate about. I've got a friend who lives in Singapore at the moment. We are crazy about K-dramas.
Right.
And she is definitely my kind of person.
Mm-hmm.
So she's the person that I can be all gooey about Hyun Bin about, and she completely gets
it. Yeah.
Yeah. Or Park Bo Gum or something. And it's like so natural. But if I was to talk to my husband about it. He's just like, what are you talking about? It's
What are you on
ridiculous.
about? Leave me
Weirdo.
alone. Yeah.
So find your people always. And then the third piece of advice I would say is, if somebody tells you no, it sounds like yes. So you should probably just do it. Never ask for permission. Always ask for forgiveness.
Oh wow, that's amazing. Really good.
If you have to ask somebody to do something, then you really shouldn't be doing it. So
Yeah.
because they've already said no, so just don't bother.
Exactly.
Just sounds like just go do it, and then just say, "Oh, sorry that I just did that." But isn't your entire digital transformation better as a result of it?
I'm going to take that with me to the boardroom then.
I think you should.
Oh, well, Kelly, thank you so much for being on this podcast. I think it's just good to learn about you as a human being, as a person, who you genuinely are, and also that you're a trailblazer in your field, and you're inspiring me, and you're going to inspire someone out there who might download this podcast or watch it on YouTube and say, oh, wow, I'm inspired. This is something I love to do. So thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. I just feel so fortunate that we met each other, because I feel like I'm looking in the mirror quite a lot when you and I speak to each other. So we're going to be BFFs, #BFFs forever.
For sure.
Yeah, you're also a trailblazer, so there's no way that I wouldn't do something like this with you. I think you're so super cool.
Oh, Kelly, on that note, thank you very much. And
thank you.
Out there. See you next time.
Bye.
If you enjoyed what you heard and were just as inspired as I was by our guest, please share on all your socials, and remember to follow, subscribe, and like this channel.